Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass, a series of digital-first conversations that we do, bringing the topics that are of most interest to you, the entrepreneur. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. Tonight, we're talking about the auto and the logistics space, calling out the big trends and the big opportunities for entrepreneurs in this industry and these industries and spaces. We're also talking about the long-term impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and how small businesses can better prepare for that. Let me quickly introduce the panelists who joined us for our masterclass. Vinkesh Gulati, President FADA, Anshuman Singh, Chairman and MD, Stellar Value Chain Solutions, Vineet Agarwal, Managing Director, TCI, Zeba Sarang, Co-founder, I Think Logistics, Akshit Bansal, Co-founder, Static. This is a question coming in on the logistics space. Vineet, maybe you want to take this on first. Tarun, he says he is an advisor. He's the CEO at TK Advisors Limited. He says, is the cost of logistics coming down? And if so, by how much percentage in comparison to your 2020? What are the areas that still needs more to be done to reduce supply chain logistics costs, so that part of the cost reduction can be then passed on to the end consumer?
Sure. So the cost of logistics is not really coming down right now. I think there is a lot of things that need to be done, and we have to look at it more holistically and more from a long-term perspective as to how and when this cost will come down. It means that there has to be a shift towards things like multimodal logistics. It means that we have to have better packaging solutions so that you reduce wastage. It means that you need to be more compliant so that you're able to get input credit and essentially be more efficient and productive in your operations so that you're able to then bring down your cost. So I don't expect the logistics cost to really come down the next few 2-3 years. But with all these things that I just mentioned, there's going to be a shift in terms of how we look at freight or look at logistics cost. And once that starts to happen, you will also see that the cost will slowly start to come down. So there is unfortunately, we are going to face this pain of a higher logistics cost. And, the programs like the Gati Shakti, PM Gati Shakti program around how they're trying to bring all the infrastructure development related to essentially to bring down logistics cost. We are going to see a holistic outlook and development towards that. So that is really great in terms of getting the logistics cost down in the next few years.
Okay, a couple of more questions coming in from our audience. Let me come to a question for Akshit. This is coming to us from Rahat of Teamwork PR. My question for Akshit, what contribution do you expect from the government in terms of EV adoption rates and EV adoption awareness in coming years? What should the government do to take down EV vehicle prices, to essentially bring down the cost of EV vehicles? Akshit?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's already a good push from the government towards electric vehicles and building the infrastructure, right? So as I mentioned earlier, there's a 100% increase since last year, and there are 10 lakh vehicles sold, right? This year, the government in various states are mandating or changing building bylaws, and they're mandating charging infrastructure, for example, in a lot of these locations, which is one of the main hindrance to EV adoption, right? The second thing could be helping in bringing down the cost of electric vehicles, which is the second biggest hindrance for electric vehicles, right? So it could be either helping local manufacturers, or it could be reducing the cost, the import duty, so that electric vehicles become cheaper and there's mass adoption of EVs, right? So I think these are some of the push that the government can do. And there are a lot of other good policy incentives. There are a lot of subsidies that the government is giving. And yeah.
Okay, so let's come back to the supply chain question. Maybe Zeba, you want to take this one on.
Sure.
And in fact, before we address that, there was something that you were talking about earlier, and I just want to come to that. One is the impact that we are likely to see on the entire logistics industry and space. We've discussed cost, but I also want to talk routes. Just as with the airspace, Russia is a major airspace, for a lot of flights because it's also, much cheaper, I understand, to use the Russian airspace. But similarly, for the cargo and for the logistics industry, could you talk to us about the impact that you've seen, perhaps because of the uncertainty over routes, etc., and what can be done to mitigate that sort of a risk?
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sunanda. I'll add my point why the logistic prices are increasing. There has been different parts involved in it. So first is, as Vinit has mentioned, increase in crude oil prices. Initially, like currently the price of crude is skyrocketing. It is 130 USD per barrel, which was 97 USD per barrel initially. So, and we all know Russia is the third largest oil manufacturer or processor in the world after USA and Saudi Arabia, and they are the second largest exporter of the oils as well. And if we talk about how the routes is getting affected, there has been rise in air cargo prices because people like airspace which are available on Russia and Ukraine are completely shut. So logistic companies and carrier has to use a longer path to get the shipments delivered from one location to another. And then if they are using a longer path to opt for the delivery, definitely is directly affecting the fuel consumption which they are using, and which is directly affecting the cost in it. And if we talk about, there has been shift from cargo which are getting shipped from rail to ocean also. We are also considering ocean as a one part where people are opting for it, and because the freight trains which were carrying goods from China to Europe through Russia and Ukraine are completely unavailable. That is also not working. So they have to use our ocean routes as well. And because of ocean routes are in demand, and there has been shortage in containers. If we talk about how we can mitigate the risk, there has been several solutions available for it. So first point, or to go with it, leverage the technology. So we also have to identify, or organization enterprises have to identify what all technology or how we can use technology to fill the gap between.
Sure.
There has to be a complete supply chain strategy has to be considered by using a tech which can be help them to identify the route optimization. There has been solutions available to track the route, which is the fastest, which is the safest route to get the shipments delivered, etc. So I believe technology can play a very important and vital role in this situation.
Okay, another question coming back for Akshit. This one is coming to us from Sanjana. She says she looks at advocacy and government relations at Static. Okay, so Sanjana says, Akshit, what's the scope of electric vehicles in India, and how do charge point operators like you differentiate yourselves from the likes of Tata, etc.?
Yeah, correct. So I think how we differentiate ourselves from the likes of other players is because we do a lot of local manufacturing, and that helps us de-risk a lot of supply chain issues, global supply chain issues that might be coming up, right?
Okay. We've got another question that's come to us, and this one is saying, Zeba just said technology can change, but has the logistics and supply chain industry learned enough from the pandemic to be disrupted completely by technology? Open to all of you. Maybe Zeba, you want to take this first?
Sure. I'll add my point here. Yes, definitely technology can be a factor to avoid these things in the future. There has to be a different solutions altogether available to mitigate the risk. I believe nobody has a playbook when the pandemic hit to the world. We have just created the solution of our own self and worked on it. And I believe in this pandemic, the first thing which was used by most of the people was technology. People were using, like we do have our app available to, to get our vaccination drive, etc. To we get it done. So I believe technology played a vital role in pandemic, and it will definitely be a vital role in this Ukraine and Russia war as well.
It's time for a quick break here on the Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass. Back in just a moment. Vineet, if you can respond to that question, but also talk about, the whole issue of manpower and manpower costs. And I understand, especially when it comes to, the shipping industry, there's been a lot of concern, people, the crew not being allowed to get off the ship, and therefore that's putting pressure on the other forms of cargo, logistics, etc., and just driving up the overall cost for manpower. So if you could respond on that, and also whether any lessons have really been learned from the pandemic when it comes to the use of technology in this space.
So clearly, technology is an enabler to the logistics business, and what we have been seeing is that whatever new technology that has come about, or rather, I would say they have been adopted more and more. It has had an impact, and definitely a positive impact. Some of the startups that are there, again, would be enablers to larger businesses and to companies like us, which are into diverse areas like supply chain management, shipping, as well as the cold chain logistics or rail logistics and so on. So there is clearly an ecosystem that is getting developed, which is going to be possible for the country to move towards a better logistics system, including the fact that there is a logistics stack being developed by the government where transactions are also going to happen online, or there'll be a lot of influence. The visibility of the entire transaction is actually available digitally. So all of these changes are coming about. And in terms of manpower costs, yes, during the pandemic, in the height of the pandemic, we did see issues with the seafarers, and there was a cost increase, escalation, and even now we are seeing that because of China being under lockdown in several areas, so we are seeing that impact as well. But nevertheless, domestically, we are seeing impact on manpower costs as well. That cost has gone up not just because of inflation, but because of a shortage of people, either in the delivery chain or even in the operating chain. So things like even truck drivers, there's always been a shortage of truck drivers. So like this, we are seeing that some of this will get perpetuated into higher costs, but overall, the use of technology will help us to mitigate some of that cost, but there would be an increase in costs as well.
Okay. Pinkesh, is this a fair question to ask? With the way fuel prices have been increasing just in the last 2-3 weeks, will we ever reach a point where EV vehicles will cost the same then as petrol diesel vehicles? Are we not far away from that day?
So Sunanda, basically two separate questions. So if we talk on the fuel prices, obviously fuel prices are increasing, and like one of the fellow panelists said, that it will take another 2-3 a period of time when it starts. But like we also heard that this is also supporting the EV adoption in India, because today it's reached around 105, and buying an EV no doubt makes sense even at a price of 1 lakh plus. But obviously the entry price of EV, which are I'm talking of the normal EVs, not the low speed EVs. Okay. And the quality EVs I'm talking of, the price still is very high, and the kind of infrastructure we need is still in development. So I've seen, like Akshit, there are a lot of startups who have come up who are setting up the charging station and all. But there is still time when we'll say that for an electric vehicle to be the main runner, the infrastructure needed, maybe the swapping battery starts at all the places. Those are also important for that EV percentage to go up. Additionally, I feel it will take another year or two for the battery prices to come down a bit.
Okay.
Hopefully, if this COVID wave must have not been there, or the Russian war, that would obviously be come down to a very economical level, where we could have said that the ICE two-wheeler, which is the petrol two-wheeler, would be just 10% cheaper than an electric vehicle two-wheeler, and
Sure.
obviously that would have a big jump on the sale. The hype is already there. Currently, no doubt the production issues are there. You can't, even electric vehicle two-wheelers are not available off the rack. So once the production issues are sorted, we'll see the kind of dissemination of EV in the auto industry. And once the price goes down, which is another year or two, EV will surely be achieve around 40-50% of the total sale.
Okay, let me very quickly take in our second poll question for our audience. Will inventory and reserves help mitigate short-term supply chain disruptions? This poll has popped up on your screen. Let me take another question. A few years back, we used to hear Indian products are not competitive due to poor infrastructure, adding to logistics costs, including congestion at ports, etc. Now, with the government putting the focus on roads and highways and building them really in a big way, has the situation improved, or are we still far away from countries like Singapore, China, etc.? What are reasons India is still slow on adopting multimodal logistics options? Open to our experts from the logistics space. Anshuman, you want to take this first, perhaps?
Yeah, so I think productivity at every location. So government is already doing a lot. In fact, government has been doing more than the players involved have been doing. So in terms of the roads, the ports, the multimodal, the corridors, all have been going, the indices have been going up. So while our rating globally in the Global Logistics Performance Index keeps going up and down, but in absolute terms, and that keeps going up and down because other countries keep changing their performances. But overall, India has only been on an upward trajectory in terms of productivity and the matrices that are followed for measurement of turnaround times, movements, costs at various ports, as well as on roads. So it's a continuous ongoing improvement supply chain project across the country, and it will continue.
Okay, so in response to the second poll that we took, here is the results, 90% saying yes, 10% saying no. The question was, will inventory and supply and reserves help mitigate short-term supply chain disruptions? Vineet, I want to come to you. Would you have anything to add for this question that I had asked Anshuman to pick up? What reasons really is it that India is slow when it comes to adopting multimodal logistics options? What will push adoption faster?
Yes, and I also want to quip in for the inventory question. I think that's also very interesting. So multimodal logistics has not grown to that extent. I think some of it is because of the infrastructure constraints. And as I mentioned earlier, with the PM Gati Shakti program, there is a holistic opportunity to look at multimodal logistics. I think companies are looking at multimodal logistics more and more, especially during the pandemic, because there was a shortage of trucks, there were no drivers available, and that's when we saw things moving towards rail as well as towards coastal shipping. So as customers start wanting more and more, they will see that there will be more delivery of multimodal solutions as well. On the inventory part, I think the interesting thing is that all companies need to start looking at, especially automobile companies have started to do that, is to look at a more deeper supply chain versus a broader supply chain.
We've been talking about passenger vehicles. What happens to commercial vehicles? What happens to two-wheelers? The impact as far as demand is concerned, prices, etc. Anything you want to call out for our audience?
No doubt, post the first lockdown, we saw the sales coming in from the small commercial vehicle, and then it slowly went up to the MNHCVs also. So overall, commercial vehicle is doing good.
Sure. Okay. Let me then start taking closing comments from our panelists today as we're running out of time. Two-part question. One, your advice for entrepreneurs based on all of the things that we've been discussing today about how they should prepare for the rest of this fiscal and the rest of this calendar year. One, any trends that you would like to call out over and above what you've discussed for entrepreneurs today? Let me come to you first, Akshit. And in fact, also if you could respond to the question that had posed to Vinkesh. Akshit, about perhaps demand and what we're expecting that to be for the EV space, but also your advice for your fellow entrepreneurs.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely see a lot of positive demand for the EVs going in the current fiscal year. So I think this is an opportunity for my fellow entrepreneurs to build these components in India and to not rely on a lot of imported components.
Okay. Zeba?
Sure. So I would like to help or tell my fellow entrepreneurs to get being agile, because I believe we have to learn this from the pandemic situation and the war. We cannot be just static and just doing the same kind of thing to get our business done. We have to be agile. We have to adopt different modes of transportation. Different technology has to be in place to avoid the risk in it.
Sure. Okay. Let me come to you, Vinkesh. What advice would you have?
So obviously, I feel as of today, like everybody said, digital is the in thing. And for any entrepreneur to succeed, they should first understand what the problem is and find out a solution for that.
Okay. Let me come to you, Anshuman. What would you like to say?
I would like to tell my fellow entrepreneurs that India is a country where entrepreneurship is not very easy. You need resilience. You have to keep costs in control and keep allocating resources optimally. And this is a country for growth forever.
Fantastic. Vineet, I'm going to give you the last word.
Thank you. And I think, I echo Anshuman's optimism here. And I think entrepreneurs need to be optimistic. That is the first and most important thing. India is also a country that sometimes drags you down and you feel dejected and, you feel challenged. But I think it's very important to be optimistic in our country. And of course, think long term.
Out of time on this special masterclass talking about the auto and the logistics space, our entrepreneurs and our experts calling out the big opportunities, the role of technology and disruption, and also how you should be keeping your eye out as far as innovation in the space is concerned. That's all we have for tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.